Well, Irrigation New Zealand believes it is important that Kiwis get up-to-date information about freshwater in their local catchments and have a new way to do it. I'm very excited when I saw this news come across my inbox today. This is called Your Catchment. It's an online platform which showcases water monitoring data and different ways freshwater can support well-being. Irrigation New Zealand Chief Executive Elizabeth Soal joins us now to talk about this new and innovative platform. Hey Liz, let's see, what was the background? I see 2018, an SFF fund, a Sustainable Food and Fibres Future Fund behind this, but it has been a collective approach to get to this. Can you give us a bit of a background to this journey to today?
Sure. So like you said, the project was originally conceived as a concept back in 2018 because it was realised by the irrigation sector that our irrigation schemes were doing an awful lot of water quality, in particular monitoring, as well as the regional councils that have been doing all of their state of the environment monitoring for quite a long time. And it was felt that we were gathering an awful lot of data, but how was that getting turned into useful information? And so the concept was that we would find a way to use some of that water quality data that was being undertaken, the monitoring that was being undertaken by the irrigation scheme, and also linking it potentially with some of the stories around what farmers were doing on the ground to address water quality issues. And so the application was put into the Sustainable Farming Fund as it was then, which was accepted by MPI. We brought in partners, like we said, and originally it was to be piloted in 2 catchments. We reduced that down to 1 last year to make sure that we did a really good job of doing it well. So it's been piloted in the Waitaki catchment. So it's been a partnership between the Otago Regional Council, the Environment Canterbury, who are the 2 regional authorities that span that catchment, as well as the 6 irrigation schemes on the ground in the lower Waitaki catchment. So it has been a partnership approach to it, and we're really excited to be able to launch it now.
All right, I'm on the website here and you can click on check your data. How do you believe that this will be utilised, and where do you see this going in terms of adding on that usability?
Sure. So there's sort of 2 main audiences for it at the moment. So there's one which is just the community at large. So that's telling the catchment story to general people out there in the general public, to give them up-to-date information that's really fine-grained so that they can find out about water quality information in their catchment. The other audience is the farmers and the irrigation schemes themselves, so they can see what's happening with water quality in a really up-to-date manner, and then they can potentially take that information and use it to develop practice change or look at how they might target specific areas. So, for instance, if there was a part of a catchment that was showing that there were elevated phosphorus levels in that area, then they could tailor their farm plans, their farm environment plans that they've already got in place to address some of those issues more specifically than might otherwise be happening.
Is this specifically for those who actually understand the numbers? There is a lot of numbers and graphs, and from a usability perspective as a general public, I wouldn't really fully understand if things were improving, if they were good. But for those who live and breathe it and are doing farm environment plans around it, it's really helpful. How can we develop this to be a wider storyteller?
Yeah, and that's one of the tricky things about conveying scientific information and data in a way that's easily understood by people who don't use these sort of tools every day. So we've tried to use a simplified key that shows whether water quality is improving or declining or staying the same. We've also got a scale there that shows how sites, whether that's groundwater or surface water, compare to other sites within the catchment. And back on the landing page, we've also got an instructional video about how the site can be used. We've got a glossary that explains a lot of what the terminology is, we hope in an easy to understand way. And then within the portal itself, we've also got information about what's happening within sites in the catchment. So it's telling the narrative story behind the numbers in a way that we hope will be engaging and people can understand, as well as providing information on sites of interest, for instance, Lake Wainono, which is a really significant regionally and nationally wetland that supports a lot of ecological value. And so we've got those sort of information in there as well, in the hope that we can tell the entire story rather than just providing the scientific data, which tends to be what happens in these sorts of information exercises in the past.
I love the headline here, water more than just meets the eye, a get out there and do it approach to water monitoring. I can definitely see a lot of people that listen and watch Sarah's Country interested in expanding this concept beyond the Otago, South Canterbury, Waitaki areas, and of course to a smaller farm level, because these particular catchments are very precise in these data monitoring. What is involved to expand it, in the technology to put in place in your own catchment, and who do they get in touch with?
Sure. So I'll start from the last question. If there is interest in expanding this beyond the Waitaki, which we're really hopeful will occur, because that's the idea behind it, is that it's a pilot and that it is going to be expanded into other areas. The first port of call is to get in touch with Irrigation New Zealand, and you can contact us via our website or the information that's there on the portal itself. It can be as big or small as whomever is getting interested in this wants it to be. We have worked with Iris Data Science out of Dunedin to build the platform that puts the data on the website, essentially. The data is drawn in from the servers databases that are used by Environment Canterbury and Otago Regional Council and NIWA, because some of the data that we use comes from there as well. So really we've worked hard to develop a platform, a framework behind it, that other data can then be put into more easily to then you put it into other catchments as well. And it can be as large or as small as the users want it to be. It does look a bit like LAWA, which is the Land and Water Aotearoa site that's already in place, which is used by all the regional councils across the country to input data. However, ours is more fine-grained than that. It's really catchment specific down to the sites that are used. And also it's more up to date because we don't have as large a data pool to use. We don't have to go through the long process of data checking that all the regional councils have to do when they pull their data. So the LAWA site gets updated once every year or 18 months, but ours is getting updated it's sort of 2 weekly, so it's much more frequent updates than that has now.
Fantastic, well done. And of course, open source, I would imagine, to the fact that can plug into farm environment plans and be measurable ongoing. It's all about just starting that core foundation of data to then build on that ecosystem. That's awesome. Congratulations. Catchment.waitakiirrigators.co.nz is the domain that I have in front of me. I suggest you either have checked that out or get in touch with Irrigation New Zealand. Elizabeth, tonight throughout the show, we have been discussing, because it's International Podcast Day, and I know you do a lot of travelling, and what a wonderful way to take that information, or absorb information on the road. What are some of your top recommendations for our audience, what you're listening to?
Well, I tend to listen to true crime podcasts. I'm a bit of a fan of all true crime podcasts, but some of my favourites would be, one of the first I ever listened to was called Death in Ice Valley, which is a BBC podcast about a unsolved murder in Norway, which is just fascinating. And for me, that's sort of one of my benchmarks. I also like listening to podcasts around politics. So Fault Lines is one that's just launched about the fallout from the Iraq War, what led to the Iraq War between Bush and Blair. And there's other ones that I've listened to around the Clinton-Lewinsky affair, and the name of it just escapes me at the moment, sorry. But yeah, I love all politics podcasts and true crime. So I would highly recommend Death in Ice Valley as one of the best.
Good way to shut off in terms of science that you're living and breathing every single day, and a bit of juicy gossip, especially Lewinsky, Clinton. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's Chief Executive from Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soal. This is Sarah's Country.